My mom looked the same as she did when I last saw her, before I rode that carousel out of her world. Just seeing her was enough to put a sinking feeling in the pit of my stomach. We hugged in front of the carousel, and I kept an eye on the ride, still unnerved by it sitting there, dead, dark and quiet. It felt like there was some kind of danger in the air. Something was off. This was confirmed by how light my mom's hug was. I could sense she was in a hurry. Her body was tight and tense. "What's wrong?" I asked, as I saw tears in her eyes. "Something is following me." My mom pushed through her emotions to get the words out. "It showed up after you showed back up, and now it won't leave me alone." "What is something?" I asked. My racing thoughts were cut off by a mechanical chug. I looked over to see the carousel coming to life next to us, its lights flickering alive and lighting up the yard. I stared at the carousel as it picked up speed. I was quickly mesmerized and frozen in my stance. I watched as something else started to come to life on the machine. The silhouette of a person. Someone tall. Someone moving right at us. They were off the carousel and on the gravel next to us rather quickly. I felt my mom tug at my arm and pull me away, breaking me out of my frozen trance. But not before I got a good look at who had come off the carousel. It looked like Ian, but wasn't him. It was a young man. Similar vibe. Dark hair, dark features, tattoos, but taller. And the tattoos were different. There was something dark and tragic that radiated out of him. I could feel it from 20 yards away. He didn't mean well. I ran out of the industrial yard and my mom followed. We were at the edge, and out of breath before I looked over my shoulder. The man with the dark aura was right behind us. He reached out for us as I struggled to get the door that led out of the yard open. I looked at his hand and was mesmerized. His skin radiated with a bright yellow light, like that of the bulbs on a carousel. I looked into his eyes, and watched his pupils spin in a hypnotizing lull. It was like he was a human carousel. I was almost sucked in again, but my mom pulled me through the door and got us out of the yard and into my car. I got the thing fired up and tore out of there and into the night. I got us further down the road. "Don't go home," my mom added. "He'll follow." "Where do we go?" I asked back. "Let's just drive until we get too tired," Mom suggested. I did just what she said, and my mom explained what was happening as we went. Ian had been right. The carousel took you down. My mom never said hell, just somewhere you didn't want to be. Darkness. And it never stopped. And it multiplied. It was a relentless evil. And she had fallen prey. She hoped I wouldn't too. But I had gone through that day and went back and found my mom. We had some light. We had good days. What was the deal with that? What my mom said stuck with me. A carousel is what you want it to be. The speed can be too fast or too slow depending on who you are. It can be boring. It can be fun. It can be disorienting, but it's up to you to make it what you want. It's slow enough that you can get off whenever you want, but only with care. If you come in with bad vibes, it can make you sick. If you come in happy, it can make you happier, my mom explained. "So, what was it for you?" I asked. I was lost when I got on that carousel. I didn't know what it was, and it took me places I won't ever talk to you about. It completely changed who I was. But I always had a hope that someday it would rotate back to you, no matter how fast or dark that carousel ride got. My mom said and then looked over at me with haunting eyes. "Then why can't you stay?" I asked. "Because that darkness will always follow me. I just can't shake it." "I'm sorry," my mom answered. My mom further explained she was horrified when I showed up in her reality, knowing it meant I had gone through a carousel. But it was too late at that point. She knew she'd eventually have to protect me like this. so she just tried to make the most of that time before I ducked out of it. I was also lucky my mom was protecting me while I was on my ride, and off it as well. My mom explained this wasn't the first time she came out of a carousel to help me. The dark figures inside had looked for me before, came out, and tried to lure me down. But my mom had followed them out, and kept them from me. I could feel it. I thought of times over the years when I felt like I could feel my mom was somewhere near. One time I thought I heard her voice outside of the door of my bedroom. I think it was really her, protecting me. And now she was here doing it again. What was she protecting me from, though? Those that use the carousel to transport and bring back people just like me? They knew there were people who were trying to find the loved ones they'd lost to the carousels. They knew we were easy targets. That's who was after us right now, and the only way to get them to stop was to wait them out. They could only be out from the carousel for so long before they had to go back. There was no specific time limit, but they could feel when they needed to get back, and would eventually retreat. I saw headlights move into the rearview mirror. I didn't have to ask my mom. I could feel it was him. The lights raced up behind us even though I had the pedal on my old Geo Metro floored. I felt my mom's hand reach over and rest softly on my right hand on the wheel. I looked over and saw tears streaming down her cheeks. Then I followed those wet eyes out to a field next to us. Way off in the distance, I could see the lights of a carousel shining. I felt my mom's hand squeeze mine just a little tighter. "I'll have to be back someday," my mom said, before I heard the passenger side door click open. I looked over and watched my mom jump out of the car. I had to be going at least 80 miles an hour. I saw her rolling in the near darkness for just a moment before I looked back in front of me. Every molecule of my body wanted to slam on the brakes and go back and help her, except for the ones in my brain. They knew that was suicide. Instead, I looked out at that carousel, much closer now. Then I looked back in the rearview mirror and saw those headlights behind me, much farther away. The only thing I was left with was the faint sound of the carousel tickling my ear as I drove away into the night. Months have gone by since the last incident with the carousel and my mom. I've intentionally ignored trying to find anything about them online. I'm just living my life now. I try not to even think of it sometimes, but sometimes there's no way to avoid it. I actually sat down today to finish writing this because, as I was on a walk in my neighborhood, on a perfect spring day, I heard the faint sound of carousel music, getting closer as I walked up the street. I couldn't help but pursue it, moving swifter than I should have. I wondered if I was going to see my mom, see the dark young man who wanted to suck me down with him. I did not. What I found was an ice cream truck, broadcasting out its melodic tune into the beautiful day. I laughed wholeheartedly for the first time in quite a while. I smiled and walked away,